Hey guys, before we begin, check out our Boxing Day sale at Fantasy Sabers. We are giving away a free Sun affordable saber with every order. In Revenge of the Sith, Anakin Skywalker discovers that Padme is pregnant and that he is going to be a father. In the original timeline, Anakin is overjoyed that his wife is pregnant, but fears how he will continue to keep it a secret from the Jedi Council. In reality, if Padme had survived and Anakin hadn't turned, it would have been very tricky for Anakin and Padme to operate and live like a true family whilst keeping their relationship hidden. So what if in this moment, as Anakin returned from killing Count Dooku, he decided that it was best for him to leave the Jedi Order to raise his family and be with Padme. Before Anakin made this official, he would speak with Obi-Wan. Explaining everything to his master would feel strange. He admitted his relationship to Padme, the fact that he's the father to her children, and how his path has changed. He no longer needs to be a Jedi. Obi-Wan would have mixed feelings. He had always known that Anakin would succeed without being a Jedi. He had always been special that way, but he also felt as though he was disobeying his role as the Chosen One. Anakin also tells Palpatine about his decision, who believes that he's making a mistake and that the Republic needs him. Of course, Palpatine is just saying this for his own gain. He needs Anakin within the Order to turn him to the dark side and march against the Jedi Temple. But Anakin has made his mind up, and he tells his mentor that he can come and visit him whenever he wants on Naboo. At the next council meeting, Anakin would announce that he is leaving the Order, sending shockwaves throughout everyone. No one truly understood his decision until he mentioned his marriage and pregnancy with Padme Amidala. From here, Anakin and Padme would leave Coruscant and move to Naboo, where they start their new life. Palpatine doesn't plant visions of Padme dying in childbirth, as there is no point. He has to change his plans, and Anakin leaving would delay a lot of things. A few days later, Padme successfully gives birth to twins named Luke and Leia, and the Skywalker family is happy and healthy. This was the happiest they had ever been. Things were finally normal. Although war was raging across the galaxy, Anakin was at peace. He had done his fighting, and he was good at it, but at some point, you've got to hang the gloves up. Padme continued her work as a senator, whilst Anakin focused on fatherhood. Years would pass, and the Skywalkers raised their family. The Clone Wars were still raging throughout the galaxy, and the conflict was closing in for 2 decades. This was primarily driven by Palpatine, who knew he had to dramatically change his plans following Anakin's departure from the Order. He needed the Chosen One. Without him, it was worthless. The Clone Wars raged for 15 long years, turning the galaxy into a never-ending battlefield. Without Anakin Skywalker's brilliant leadership, the Republic struggled to maintain its foothold. The Jedi were spread thin and losing many of their skilled warriors, and they became desperate. Entire worlds were left vulnerable, with separatists gaining ground in key systems. While the Jedi Order had once been a symbol of hope, now they seemed worn down, their numbers dwindling. Morale across the galaxy was at an all-time low. Civilians blamed both sides for the destruction, and peace seemed like a distant dream. The Republic's forces, though still vast, were fractured and losing cohesion. The once efficient strategies of the Clone Wars faltered without Anakin's ingenuity. Palpatine engineered the war to take longer, ensuring that when the children of Skywalker grew up, they would be able to turn to the dark side and help him win the war. In the meantime, he reunited with Maul and made him his apprentice. He became the figurehead of the Clone Wars. For years, every battle seemed to claim more lives than the last. The war consumed everything: resources, hope, and countless lives. Even on Naboo, far from the front lines, whispers of despair filled the air. The galaxy was weary, and the endless conflict had reshaped it into a shadow of its former self. Palpatine's visits on Naboo were frequent and calculated. He presented himself as a supportive friend to Padme and Anakin, while secretly weaving his manipulative plans around the Skywalker family. To Padme, he was a political ally, deeply invested in the Republic's welfare and her career as a senator. To Anakin, he played the role of a wise mentor and trusted confidant, someone who respected his decision to leave the Jedi Order, but subtly questioned if it was truly the right choice. He was very smart about his visits. and they happened very frequently as the children were young, so they would recognize and understand him as a man close to his parents. The Chancellor was extremely smart. Therefore, to Luke and Leia, Palpatine became almost a mythical figure, a source of fascination and admiration. He brought them gifts, ancient holocrons, rare artifacts, and exotic trinkets, each tied to the tales of power and mystery that captivated their young minds. He was the uncle they never had. He praised their Force abilities endlessly, calling them exceptional and destined for greatness, planting seeds of pride and curiosity that made them question their father's teachings. His stories hinted at truths about the Force that the Jedi were too afraid to reveal, drawing Luke in particular closer to him. Palpatine carefully framed the Jedi as weak and outdated, blaming their failures for the endless war and the galaxy's suffering. He began doing exactly what he did to Anakin as the Chosen One grew up on Coruscant, but now to his children. He posed seemingly innocent questions to Anakin that made him second guess his choices. Had he abandoned the galaxy too soon? Could he have ended the war if he stayed? Yet Palpatine never appeared hostile. His manipulation was slow and subtle, always wrapped in charm and understanding. Over time, his influence grew, especially over Luke, who began to see Palpatine as a wise figure with answers Anakin could not provide. By the time Anakin started to sense something was wrong, Palpatine's hold over his family, particularly his son, was already deeply rooted. Hey guys, make sure to check out our saber shop, Fantasy Sabers, for the best NeoPixel sabers on the market. We have a bunch of perfect replicas and other insane Padawan sabers for sale. Check them out on our website, first link in the description below, and grab your own one today. Since birth, Anakin trained Luke and Leia as best as he could. They were his greatest achievement and the thing he was most proud of. He taught them every day, teaching them everything he had learned as a Jedi. They started with the basics, meditation to focus on their minds and feel the Force flowing through them. From here, they moved to lightsaber combat, where Anakin showed them how to fight with speed and precision. They practiced in the open fields and forests on Naboo, their blades flashing in the sunlight as they sparred against each other and their father. Leia was graceful and controlled, her movements precise and efficient, reminding Anakin of Obi-Wan. Luke, on the other hand, was raw power, full of energy and passion that made him unpredictable but also dangerous. Together, they pushed each other to be better, learning teamwork and balance. Anakin taught them how to use the Force in creative ways, lifting heavy objects, sensing danger, and even influencing the thoughts of others. He wanted them to be strong enough to protect themselves and the galaxy that was still at war. By the time they were 16, their power was undeniable. Leia's precision made her nearly unbeatable in a duel, while Luke's strength in the Force allowed him to overpower almost any opponent. Anakin was proud of them, but he also was worried. Sometimes during their training, Luke's frustration would get the better of him. He'd lash out with the Force, showing flashes of anger that Anakin struggled to contain. Though they were growing into incredible warriors, Anakin knew that their strength alone wasn't enough. They needed wisdom and control to truly master the Force, and he feared that they weren't ready for the challenges that the galaxy would throw at them. It was definitely clear they were the Chosen One's children, and the power of Skywalker ran thick in their skin. They had created a happy life together, the perfect lifestyle that Anakin absolutely loved. Things would change when the Jedi Council bit off their pride and realized they needed to have Anakin's help in this fight. Yoda and Windu make a visit to Anakin on Naboo, unannounced, to plead with Anakin. They explain that the state of the Republic and the Jedi Order is at its worst they have ever seen. The entire galaxy is tired of the fighting. There has to be some sort of end. Windu argues that as the Chosen One, Anakin has a duty to the galaxy, even if he no longer sees himself as a Jedi. Yoda appeals to Anakin's love for his children, warning that if the Sith gain more power, Luke and Leia's future is at risk. This actually got through to Anakin, and as someone who has been watching the state of the galaxy deteriorate, he wondered if it was time to do something. He had always resented the Jedi for their expectations and pushing him into a role that cost him his peace in the past. The Jedi Masters leave, and Anakin can't help but think they are right. He is going to have to leave his life behind as a peaceful father and return to war. That same night, as Anakin discusses his thoughts with Padme, the war finally reaches Naboo. For the first time in 15 years since the wars began, the peaceful world of Naboo is invaded by the Separatists. The entire world prepares its defenses as they are invaded, with ground troops landing in Theed, but also hitting the outskirts of every town and settlement. It was a massacre. The royal army were quickly deployed into battle, but their numbers were scarce in comparison to the Separatists. Anakin, Luke, and Leia would engage in the battle, igniting their sabers and fighting with all of their might. Skywalker had taught his children to fight valiantly, but everything changed as Luke engaged a large squadron of droids to protect a mother and her infant child. As he attempted to rescue them, a bomb landed and Luke Skywalker was dead. Anakin and Padme go absolutely crazy and Leia is heartbroken, none of them understanding what has happened. With Luke's death, Anakin calls an immediate retreat and they all band together to escape the planet. The next scene cuts to the inside of a ship, full of dark side insignia and clearly not home to the light side of the Force. Inside, the eyes of Luke Skywalker shoot open, struggling to breathe and not understanding what has happened. He was kidnapped, but he is alive and taken to the Separatist leader, Darth Sidious. As Luke stares at Sidious, he begins to smile, and Sidious welcomes him, calling him his child. It turns out that this plan has been in motion for years now. Chancellor Palpatine revealed his true identity as Darth Sidious, a Sith Lord, to Luke Skywalker when he was 14. Palpatine positioned himself as the most trusted man in Luke's life, and he told him all about the dark side and tales of the past. As an easily influenced boy, Luke wanted to join the man whom he believed was his second father, someone he could trust. Palpatine had been secretly training Luke over the last couple of years, and now they had successfully faked Luke's death. From here, Palpatine continued to train Luke in the ways of the dark side. He was his new apprentice, and officially the next in line in the role of two. He grew to learn all about Force lightning, choke, and how to harness his hate and emotions. He was a prodigy for Palpatine to relish in. The boy used to always beg his father to rejoin the war, but Anakin would never go for it. He enjoyed his peaceful life too much. Luke being alive would be kept a secret. The Skywalkers would go to Coruscant, where they'd rejoin the war effort. The Council was very pleased with Anakin's return, and they welcomed Leia's help, understanding that she had Skywalker blood and will be very powerful in the Force. Anakin was allowed a temporary seat on the Council to help with the war effort. At this point, Yoda, Windu, Kenobi, Plo Koon, and Ki-Adi-Mundi were all on the Council, but also Ahsoka Tano, who had rejoined the Order about a decade ago and become a Jedi Master and took her seat on the Council. Anakin was caught up with all the news of the war. He was informed of their current skirmishes and where troops had been deployed. War became grueling and tough. The Council explained that after he left the Order, it was like the droids had become better fighters, and since then, the war had been balanced and equal. For the following months, Anakin would re-enter the Clone Wars. Anakin, Leia, Ahsoka, and Kenobi lead brutal campaigns into Christophsis, hitting the Separatists hard with all of their forces. What the Jedi found was that Anakin was still just as proficient as he was 15 years ago. It didn't take long for him to slip right back into place and for his military tacticianary mind to find itself again. For Leia, this was awesome. She had grown up on Naboo, sheltered from the war, but with so many different stories, both from smugglers and spice traders when they stopped through Theed, but primarily from her father, who, as part of their training, told them all about his stories during the war. Being here with Tano and Kenobi was special. They were like aunt and uncle to her, and visited them constantly as children and through to teenagehood. Anakin and his daughter won many battles, and the tide was beginning to turn against the Separatists. It was clear that Anakin was making a decisive difference by joining the war effort. Luke was kept relatively sheltered in this part of the war. Palpatine had a plan, and he didn't want to reveal that the boy was still alive just yet. If he ever entered the battlefield, he wore a cloak and helmet so as not to reveal himself. This continued for many months, and the Sith Lord knew that he was now closing in on the final stages of his plan. He needed Luke to be ready, and that the only thing holding him back all these years. He also had Maul to deploy whenever he needed him. When Anakin left the Order, it meant that he couldn't just storm Coruscant. He needed the Chosen One, or the next best thing in his son. Palpatine consolidates his forces for a final strike, leading the Separatist fleet in a direct attack on Coruscant. The surprise assault is intended to destabilize the Republic and draw out the remaining Jedi for one final confrontation. Even Palpatine, arguably the most patient man in the world, was tired of war and tired of letting the Jedi rule the Republic. As Palpatine and Luke descend into the Coruscant system with the Separatist forces, the Republic scrambles its defenses to defend Coruscant. The beauty of Palpatine's plan was in its preparation. Anakin, Leia, Obi-Wan and Ahsoka are away on Ryloth, fighting a deadly siege. By the time they even find out about the invasion, they would have to scramble to retreat and return to Coruscant. But the Council knew it was imperative to abandon Ryloth and almost all campaigns happening throughout the galaxy and bring as many Jedi home to defend their capital. Palpatine and Luke lead the battle together. Palpatine's identity as the Sith Lord is revealed when he fights a group of Jedi on the ground and his hood is removed. But this didn't faze him. He didn't care anymore who knew. They would all be dead soon. As starships and clones enter the battle, the streets of Coruscant become chaotic. Citizens run for their lives as super battle droids fly into the air, sending rockets and debris into nearby buildings. It was a massacre, and the Republic army had to quickly consolidate their defenses. Luke went on a tear, ensuring to keep his identity hidden by a mask and focus on killing as many Jedi as possible. Plo Koon would make contact with the Skywalkers returning from Coruscant and tell them that Palpatine is the Sith Lord and is leading the attack on their people. This wasn't received well by the Jedi, especially Anakin and Leia, who viewed Palpatine as one of their closest friends, but it was all a lie. As the Separatists began to overwhelm the Republic forces, Luke and Palpatine returned to their largest dreadnought currently sitting in the atmosphere. As Anakin, Leia, Ahsoka and Obi-Wan return, they take their starships as their fleet engages in a massive space battle with the Separatist command ships. Droid fighters and Republic squadrons battle for control over the Republic skies. Amidst the chaos, Palpatine's flagship, a massive dreadnought, emerges as the main target for the Republic forces. Anakin calls his team of bombers to his position as they focus their fire on the dreadnought. The first run was unsuccessful, with bombs missing and hitting random droids flying past. As they go for a second attempt, the bombs hit the shield generators and Palpatine is left defenseless, allowing Anakin and the other Jedi to land their ships in the hangar bay. Leaping for their crafts, they all ignite their sabers and destroy the droids around them. Inside the dreadnought, they encounter heavy resistance in the hallways, but eventually fight their way to the bridge, locating Palpatine. As Palpatine laughs and welcomes the 4 Jedi he has known for decades, terrified and confused by Palpatine's true identity, Anakin tells Palpatine he will pay for what he has done. But as Skywalker says this, a man flanks Palpatine with a dark hood, lifting his head and removing the hood to reveal Luke Skywalker. Anakin and Leia drop their hilts to the floor as tears fill their eyes. Palpatine explains that their family has changed and now understands the true nature of the Force. Luke's eyes were a stark yellow, full of the dark side. Leia tries to reason with Luke, explaining that Palpatine is the evil one here, not the Jedi. But Luke understands that it is the Jedi who have allowed this conflict to go on. For over 1,000 years, the Jedi have ruled and allowed corruption and slavery to persist throughout the galaxy. They aren't heroes, they aren't saviors, but the dark side will bring salvation. The dark side will introduce true order into the galaxy so that the scum and villainy can be destroyed. Anakin can't believe what he is hearing. His son has changed. As the Chosen One squashes his tears, he uses the Force to bring the hilt of his saber back to his hand, igniting its sapphire glow. His team does the same, and they move forward. As they go to strike, from the entrance of the room, a Sith blade ignites and the Dathomirian Maul enters, seeing Kenobi for the first time in decades. Palpatine's Crimson Blade clashes against Anakin's as Kenobi and Tano leap towards Luke. Leia holds back, stunned and confused, frozen in time. Her brother has turned to the dark side, and now she is expected to duel in combat. She won't do it. Anakin and Palpatine use speed and power to create one of the most intense fights of the Clone Wars. Fighting Anakin was something Palpatine had always been intrigued about, and the Chosen One's power didn't disappoint. Luke was stronger than Obi-Wan had expected. Though only 16, his connection to the dark side of the Force was strong. The Jedi swap opponents, and Anakin takes on his son. His emotions were high, and he knew he wasn't going to kill him. The duel between Anakin and Luke was intense, their lightsabers clashing in bursts of light and sound. Anakin fought with skill and precision, but Luke's raw power and aggression pushed him to his limits. Nearby, Obi-Wan and Ahsoka faced Palpatine, who unleashed devastating Force attacks and wielded his Crimson Blade with terrifying speed. Leia, refusing to lose her brother, reached out to Luke through the Force. Obi-Wan and Anakin switched, which allowed Obi-Wan to fight Maul. As the Dark Tyrant spat at Kenobi, he leaped and tried to kill him, but his arrogance took over and all he desired was Obi-Wan dead. As he raced forward and taunted the Jedi about killing Qui-Gon all those years ago, Obi-Wan took the opportunity and killed Darth Maul. Back with Leia and Luke, she spoke to his heart, reminding him of their bond and the love their parents had for him. For a moment, Luke hesitated, doubt flickering in his eyes, but the dark side still held him tight. Anakin and Leia knew they couldn't save him. Together, they combined their efforts, their strikes perfectly timed to overpower Luke. With a final push, they knock him unconscious, ensuring he wouldn't be harmed further. Leaving him behind, Anakin and Leia turned their focus to Palpatine, joining Obi-Wan and Ahsoka in the desperate battle. Their combined strength overwhelmed the Sith Lord, and in a final, decisive moment, they struck him down, ending his reign of terror. The room fell silent, the darkness lifting, but Anakin's heart was heavy as he looked at his unconscious son, knowing their fight to bring Luke back to the light was far from over. The Republic fleet secured a decisive victory over the remaining Separatist forces, finally ending the Clone Wars after years of bloodshed and loss. Across the galaxy, people celebrated the dawn of peace. Though the scars of war would take time to heal, the Jedi began rebuilding their order, focusing on unity and learning from the mistakes that had allowed the dark side to rise. Anakin, Padme, Leia, and Luke returned to Naboo, where they worked tirelessly to restore their home. Naboo had been ravaged by the war, but with Anakin's strength, Padme's leadership, and Leia's determination, they inspired others to rebuild. Luke, burdened by his past choices, withdrew for a time, struggling to find his place in this new peace. But his family never gave up on him. Leia remained by his side, guiding him with her strength and unwavering love. Anakin too was patient, knowing Luke needed to find his own way back to the light. Over time, Luke's heart softened, and the dark side that had clouded his soul began to fade. He returned to the light, embracing the teachings of the Force with a clarity he hadn't known before. Years later, he met Mara Jade, a fiery and independent woman who challenged him in all the right ways. Their bond grew into a deep love that grounded Luke and solidified his commitment to the light. Together, they built a life filled with hope and purpose, proving that even the darkest past could lead back to the light. The galaxy, though scarred, was finally safe. Anakin's family found peace, and the Force itself seemed to be at balance once more. It was the end of one story and the beginning of a brighter, longer future.
Ignite your imagination with fantasy sabers.
If you enjoyed today's video, you must watch What If Anakin Never Went to Mustafar and What If Dooku Was Anakin's Master. Please check out our saber shop, Fantasy Sabers, for the largest collection of replicas, Padawan sabers, and more. The link is first in the description. Thank you all for watching, and may the Force be with you.